Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our Prep for Blue webinar series on stakeholder engagement. The aim really of this whole series is to share best practices and stakeholder engagement in support of the Mission Ocean targets. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items to run through. I would ask that if you are not speaking, that you make sure your microphone is muted. If you have any questions today, please feel free to ask them using the Q&A function here. But if you have any technical issues arising with Teams and you need support, please feel free to message me in the chat. And then if you have any questions today, please feel free to raise your hand as well. Today's session will be recorded, so if you don't wish to be in the recording, I would suggest you just turn off your camera. But that should hopefully is everything today. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And what I will do is I will hand over to Susanna Bastian, who is a Prep for Blue partner from SETMAR. And before that, just to help us get to know you a little bit better, we might just put just a quick question into the chat. So we'll be using Mentimeter today. And if you want to use that link and open it up in your browser, we just want to know where you're joining us from. I'll just give everyone a moment to do that. Mm-hmm. And there are some other questions there that we'll share later on in the session.
I'm not sure how to answer. There is no a window or something.
Oh, so hopefully we have is the link gone into the chat there for everybody?
Yeah, I'm on the browser, but I cannot write.
Oh. Let me see. I think we've seem to have some responses coming in. Do we? So we don't seem to be able to write. Let's see. Well, what I'll do is, Susanna, if you want to get started, I'll change the settings here and we'll let everyone answer slowly and then we'll have a look at when you're finished.
Okay. Sorry, Sarah, maybe it's the person who creates the meeting who has to integrate Mentimeter there.
Perhaps I was having some issues with it earlier, Lucia, so we just said we would add the link into the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, and perhaps it was an admin issue, but we can access it anyway on if people want to follow the link in the chat and use it, put that into their browser, they can answer the questions there.
Okay, good morning. My name is Susanna Baston. Welcome to this second webinar at Prep for Blue Stakeholder Engagement webinar series, where Arantxa Murillas Maza will be with us today talking about the stakeholders' engagement for assessing marine biodiversity value. I'm from SETMAR in the northwest of Spain, in Galicia. And before introduce Arantxa to the topic, I do a brief introduction to the stakeholder and where we are in the Prep for Blue project as well, for those of you that are familiar with it. So in 2022, the European Commission set up 5 missions, which are the Mission Climate, the Mission Cancer, the Mission Smart Cities, the Mission Soil, and the Mission Ocean and Waters, in order to provide concrete solutions to some of our greatest challenges in Europe and in the whole society. And they have very ambitious goals to deliver concrete results by 2030. So one of those missions are the Restore Our Oceans and Waters, which has 3 main objectives: protect and restore marine and freshwater ecosystems and biodiversity, prevent and eliminate pollution of our ocean, seas and waters, and make the sustainable economy carbon neutral and circular. But there are also 2 enablers, which are cross-cutting instruments. One is the digital twin ocean, and the one that brings up all together here today is the public mobilization and engagement. The mission has a very ambitious target, as I said before, just for mention some, is protect a minimum of 30% of the EU seas area, reduce by at least 50% plastic litter at sea, and promote circular and low carbon blue economy. This project is within the first implementation phase and will last till 2025. So the goal of this series is to help upskill participants in the use of different methods and tools, specifically to those projects within the 4 sea basins set up by the mission. They are called Mission Lighthouses, and they are the Atlantic and Arctic one, the Baltic and North Sea, the Danube and Black Sea, and the Mediterranean Sea. So
Sorry.
there are different projects. Yeah.
Sorry, Susanna.
You have seen the first slide from the beginning. Maybe this is a mistake.
You are not seeing the slides?
Yes,
We can
the
see-
first one.
You are not in presentation mode.
Yes. I'll try again. Can you see the different slides now?
That's perfect now, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
now yes.
Okay, we can start from the beginning then. Well, I mentioned the 5 missions from the European Commission and the objectives of the mission to restore our ocean and waters. Mentioned the 2 enablers, the digital twin of the ocean and the public mobilization and engagement. And mentioned that we are in the first implementation phase. So I was explaining now about the mission lighthouses, and there are these 5 sea basins, 4 sea basins, and for each of one of the main mission objectives was set up, one for each. So with that, Prep for Blue aims to ensure cohesion and connectivity across sectors and between European citizens and stakeholders. This series is based on a previous one within the project called Citizen Engagement Series, which you can find it at the Prep for Blue website, as well as other resources such as this Beneath the Surface report, which is a very interesting reading. In terms of the stakeholder engagement, there are also some reports already in the website, and there are the mission ecosystem database called Wavelinks, which I highly recommend to register and give it a try, because you can find there different projects related with the mission, stakeholders, and engagement methods. So please go and give it a try, as I said. From Prep for Blue, we identify the stakeholders related with the ocean knowledge based on the triple helix method. So we have here the knowledge ecosystem, the socioeconomical ecosystem, and the governance with their needs. So we have here that the governance main need main activity is to do policies and funding. The knowledge providers are mainly interested in getting data and provide training to transfer that knowledge. And the socioeconomical is divided in citizens and industry, and they aim to solve their needs in base of the ocean knowledge. So if we do zoom in those groups or those ecosystems, we can see a subdivision in each of them. For instance, in the governance group, we divided in decision making.
Esto de camino, ¿vale? Pasamos al tú ahora.
Sorry. can you? We have the decisions. Sarah, can you mute this person that I can?
He should be muted now, yes.
Okay, sorry. So in the governance, we have the decision makers and the funding organizations. For decision makers, we include policy makers, marine protected areas managers, standardization bodies. From the knowledge ecosystem, we have differentiated between the knowledge providers, which are schools and vocational and educational training centers, media, ocean literacy networks, and the knowledge owners, referring to universities and research and technology organizations. And within the socioeconomical ecosystem, we differentiate between the citizens and civil society organizations and the business and industry, referring to those to companies, industrial cluster, business developers, entrepreneurs. So there are bilateral relationships that are more easily within each of those ecosystems. But with those spirals within the graphic, we wanted to highlight that we need tools and methods to interlink all of those groups in order to share the ocean knowledge and to spread that knowledge to cover all the needs. Related with the knowledge and the tools, we have the main types of engagement. We have four levels of engagement here. The first one is inform, in which the interested parties receive information. The second level is consult, in which you request a feedback from the stakeholders. The third one is involve and collaborate, in which the solutions are agreed between all the partners. And empower is the last one, in which the stakeholders are the ones that take the final decision. So till here, the introduction in stakeholder engagement. I just mentioned that this is the second webinar for the first series, that is the summer series, and we will have the third one in a couple of weeks that will be led by Gareth Davis, explaining the ups and downs of delivering a sustainable blue economy, specifically focused on the ORNI experience. And now I introduce Arantxa Murillas, but first of all, I like to check with Sarah if the Mentimeter is sorted now and we can answer the question, Sarah.
So for me, it seems to be working, but I'm not sure if anyone else is blocked. I don't know, Lucia, you might have different administrative access in the background if you want to see if you can launch it. But for me, it looks like all systems go.
Put in and change the questions, but I cannot answer.
Okay, and for me, it seems to be working perfectly, so I'm not sure. We might press ahead, Susanna, and then in the interest of time.
Okay.
Great.
So Arantxa Murillas Maza is a principal investigator since 2004 in the Marine Research Division of ACTI. She leads projects in different topics such as marine socioeconomics, natural resources evaluation, economic assessment of ecosystem services, fisheries management, blue economy. Recently, she set up an international consortium called CAF Fishman, with the aim to protect the Northeast Atlantic marine environment. And currently, she co-lead a work package in the BioOcean 5D project, with the aim is do the natural capital accounting for ecosystem and marine protected areas. So I'll appreciate if after this webinar you can do an evaluation survey, but now I give the floor to Arantxa. Welcome, Arantxa.
Yes, good morning and Thank you very much for your kind invitation, and thank you very much for the people online just allocating this short time slot to work and to discuss some issues in relation with the natural capital valuation and the stakeholders engagement. We will see if we can promote the discussion. I will start sharing my screen at this moment.
Arantxa, do you want
Yes.
if Sarah
yes.
shares the audience response now
Yes.
in order
Yeah.
to know the audience?
Yeah, if we have a moment, it'd be great just to share. So
This is-
today we have a great spread coming in from everywhere. So we have over 14 different countries represented. So we have Ireland, Latvia, France, Spain, Finland, Belgium, Turkey, Germany, Denmark, Finland, the list goes on, so which is great to see. We haven't had any responses to the next questions yet. We'll launch them as the presentation is going on. And we'll find out what sectors are represented and which sea basins are represented at the end as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So Arantxa, the floor is yours.
Yes. I think that now you can see the presentation and you can see the second third. Yes. Okay. I cannot see you that in the presentation. So, but if there is any question or any problem, tell me please, because I cannot see that in this presentation. I would like to start with this figure. Probably you know we did some years ago, and we can find in different works in the literature, which is the what we really do at this moment, what policymakers really do at this moment when trying to put a value into the nature. How to assess and why to assess the cause of the degradation of the marine environment, isn't it? So, as you know, we have many economic activities, maritime economic activities, which provide an important impact on the marine environment. And currently, the policymakers should report in the context of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, should report in the context of the different directive cycles, which is the cause of degradation, which is the cause of this marine degradation due to the maritime economic activities. So there are a couple of options. The first one is that which is in relation with the driver that you can see in the slide, the socio-economic impact based on maritime economic activities, and what usually policymakers in the different member states usually do is just to report as the cause of the marine environment degradation is the loss of the business indicators associated to the maritime activity. So what member states do is just to assess the business indicators concerning the maritime activities and to associate the cause of the degradation of the marine environment with the loss of those business indicators for the maritime activities. So the European Commission started suggesting that we cannot consider the cause of the degradation of the marine environment through the maritime economic activities, but taking into account the loss of the ecosystem services rather than the loss of the business activity of those maritime activities. the main problem, the main objective, how to provide a monetary assessment of those ecosystem services to reach a loss, a cost of degradation according to this loss of ecosystem services. How to provide a monetary assessment, that is the big challenge, to try to move from this approach at which we only consider the maritime economic activities in the area, in the marine area, and moving towards the ecosystem approach, the ecosystem services approach, and that valuation of the ecosystem services. But this is the real challenge that we have on the table, and that is the reason why the research organizations and the policymakers started with this problem about how to provide a monetary evaluation. But the problem is not only how, but it's also who. Probably you have read a lot of times that we cannot put price. The natural capital is priceless, and it's not possible to identify the natural capital with a monetary evaluation. That is impossible. It's something that perhaps you sometimes have read about it. Who is providing this kind of no assessment, no monetary assessment? Obviously, when we read that we cannot put value and that we cannot provide a monetary evaluation for the ecosystem services, is because we are only considering a conservationist background with no social science added to this argument. Not helpful when communicating with policymakers. Is not helpful for the protection of the natural capital not to identify a monetary evaluation. And what we really see is that policymakers assume some kind of market-based monetary assessment only for some provisioning ecosystem services, fish food provisioning and other provisioning ecosystem services, but usually forgetting about regulating ecosystem services and other cultural ecosystem services. But what we need to do is to move into another alternative, which is an alternative that is obviously is not possible. As you can read in the slide, it's not possible to consider all the nature values into a single monetary assessment, but we need a multidisciplinary and multi-perspective evaluation provided by multiple stakeholders. And that is the evaluation that we need to share with policymakers at the end of the process. And I will provide some examples that we have already developed or we are in the way of doing it. And before introducing those examples, I want to use this typical slide. You know that when we want to provide a monetary assessment of the ecosystem services, what I really want to set is we have many different methodologies. Probably you have already heard about all of them: market-based, contingency evaluation, hedonic prices, methodologies based on cost, many methodologies. But when applying those methodologies, what we want to do is not to put a monetary value to assess the natural capital, the marine environment or associated natural capital, because it's not possible to value the natural capital. What we want to value is a kind of dividend, as you can read in the slide, a kind of dividend that the natural capital, the marine natural capital, is able to provide year by year to the society to increase the well-being and to, so it's a kind of dividend, it's a contribution of the nature to the human well-being, what we usually assess in monetary terms and not the natural capital itself. The difference is very important. But even speaking in terms of contribution of the nature, even if we can say it at any time the value of the nature, what we really need to say is that it's not the monetary value of the nature, but the monetary value of the contribution of the nature. So we have many methodologies, and what I want to introduce is which kind of value we get from the application of the methods, depending on who is applying the methodology, depending on the stakeholder. In the context of, as we have commented, in the context of BioOcean 5D, we are moving with a large number of pilot studies from coastal resources to very large oceanic resources, and I will provide some examples combining different ecosystem services and pilot studies. So I want to start with this simple example, which is the probably for tropical tuna, which is the fish food provisioning ecosystem service. Probably we all see that the market price is the methodology that we usually see to assess the fish food provisioning ecosystem service. But who is providing that assessment? The key, as you can see, the key players in the international market, the markets. And this is a private valuation rather than a social value. And you can see more or less which is that DOC value, the first sale valuation coming from the markets. But this is not the value of the ecosystem service. It's the value of the market, is what we call a quasi-market value that I will explain later, which is this meaning. But this valuation is the one that the policymakers usually take as the value of the fish food provisioning, but it's not the most appropriate. Why? Because, you can see in this figure, what we are estimating is we take the market valuation, which is based on the key industries operating in the different markets. We are estimating the 0.8, which is just the demand and the supply, and we can get this quasi-market valuation. But what happens with the negative externalities when taking and when developing the fish activity? We are affecting other biomass for other stocks, not only the stock that is my target in that fishery in that particular moment. So it's necessary to apply an ecosystem approach to consider as part of the fish food provisioning ecosystem service the net balance of affecting other species at the same time. So we need to consider the food web and not only the value of the fish that we are taking in a particular fisheries. So for the tropical tuna, and then we need to speak about the marginal social cost. You can see the red area in that figure is the welfare loss when there are negative externalities. So we need to estimate, and if we use the price coming from the markets, coming from the key industries, we are not taking into account the social cost, the marginal social cost, and the estimation of the welfare loss or benefits. I can put an example of this for the mesopelagic fisheries. Changes in biomass on other species when harvesting 1 ton of mesopelagic. You can see in the figure in red, we can see other species that reduce biomass and then future market prices and valuation due to harvesting 1 ton of mesopelagic. And in blue, we have some other species that will win if we harvest mesopelagic. As you know, at this moment, there is no commercial exploitation of mesopelagic. This is an exercise to provide policymakers with arguments to see if we need or not to exploit mesopelagic community. So the net balance of the fish food provisioning when taking into account market prices but adding positive and negative externalities, and so estimating in a way and partially the social welfare is for the mesopelagic communities is around 40 euro per ton. But it's completely different if we only take into account the value, the fish food value for the mesopelagic, not taking into account the other species. This is only an example of the externality that we can incur when developing the harvest activity, but it's something that, coming back to the figure, you can see the difference if you estimate only the private market price, or if we introduce scientific together with key industry to reach the welfare estimation, and we are able to move to B and to C to estimate the rest area. So this is only in relation with the provisioning services, fish, for example, fish food provisioning ecosystem service. But I would like to introduce now what happens with the cultural use and not use ecosystem services. And I would like to introduce this example for coastal resources, for coastal fishing activities, for which we can estimate an incredible number of cultural ecosystem services associated to the oral tradition and expression, social practices, the existence value of those coastal resources would provide many cultural ecosystem services to the coastal communities. This is an example where the cultural ecosystem services are very important, and we usually employ the contingency evaluation, also choice experiment. In this case, I will provide some example of a contingency evaluation. Who is providing? This is an example to assess. In this case, I am, for a matter of time, what we estimate is a willingness to pay. I will explain later with a figure which is the meaning of willingness to pay, but who is providing this assessment is the general society, people that internalize the valuation of the cultural ecosystem services, and we apply some kind of econometric modeling to provide some estimations. In this case, in this table, I have introduced only this last value, which is the bequest value. The bequest value is the cultural value of coastal resources together with the fishing activity in coastal communities, taking into account more or less everything. all the traditions and everything in a updated way. So, of course, we can share this valuation with the policymakers, this kind of cultural ecosystem service. But what happened in this case? In this case, are the societies who is providing the assessment. So only societies internalizing the value of the natural capital, of the coastal resources, and what happens with the rest of the stakeholders, and what happens if the society cannot pay, and the willingness to pay is zero. It's a social valuation. It's a good valuation, but again, we have some problems, as we did in the case of the fish food provisioning value. In this case, which is the problem? The problem is that you can see the red area in that figure. That is the market price associated to any of the elements that we can assess. Is the quasi-market valuation, which is market-based, but we are estimating the willingness to pay depending on the type of the demand. We can have a higher or a lower area. As you can see, estimating the willingness to pay, we are increasing the valuation. We are providing a green area not estimated before. Incorporating the civil society, the general society, we are able to add more value to the natural capital. But we must recognize that is always not a complete valuation, but at least we are trying to do the effort of estimating something else than the poor quasi-market value coming mainly from key industries which only see the fish food market-based valuation. But we cannot put the value of the nature in hands, or the responsibility of the value is not only a social responsibility. It's necessary to increase also and to extend the engagement of other stakeholders when providing the valuation of the natural capital. But at least we have something when estimating this kind of social valuation using contingency evaluation or choice experiments, for instance. You can see the difference in red for the coastal resources in this area, in the Atlantic area that I have not said before, that we have estimated the cultural ecosystem services in the whole Atlantic area. If we consider only the quasi-market valuation for the fish food, we have more or less 2,000 euros per ton of valuation for the Atlantic area in general. This is only one value for the purpose of this presentation. But if we have and we consider the willingness to pay with the engagement of the whole society, we are able to estimate almost 6,000 euros per ton, estimating those cultural ecosystem services. So I hope you to start saying which kind of assessment, monetary assessment, we provide depending on the methodology and depending on who is participating or taking part in that decision. And I want to put also this example. Coming back again to the Mesopelagic. I have spoken with you about the fish food provisioning of the Mesopelagic, but incorporating negative and positive externalities, but obviously there are more ecosystem services associated to the Mesopelagic. I don't want to revise all of them, but where or when policymakers should receive information. They should take decisions. And there are trade-offs, and the trade-offs are coming because we are trying to assess in monetary terms all the ecosystem services depending on the natural capital that we want to assess. You can see coming from this summer project in collaboration with this Biocean that in the regulating ecosystem service is in terms of euros per ton and per year of mesopelagic. Remember, it's a contribution of the nature, it's not the value of the nature. So we have this figure for regulating. This additional one for food wet provisioning, the one that I have shared with you before. Other cultural ecosystem services, because there are a loss of cultural ecosystem services due to the impact on emblematic species. There is also an important valuation for fish oil and fish meal provisioning, but the policymakers should take into account the trade-off, the net balance. The policymakers should consider all the valuation. Some of them are social when coming from cultural ecosystem services. Others are quasi-market prices, but in some cases, thanks to the ecosystem approach models, we can provide externalities, and policymakers should combine the contribution of all stakeholders, key industries, scientific knowledge, and society in general to reach this trade-off final figure, which is the one that say that in the case of the mesopelagic, the best is not to start exploiting the mesopelagic, the commercial exploitation of any potential future fishery. So, and just to finish, what is very important is that each methodology is associated. This is just a summary of some of the points that I have commented. I have started saying that we cannot continue saying that we cannot put money and that the contribution of the nature is priceless because it's very large and very important, and we cannot put a monetary valuation. But currently, policymakers mainly use the management cost, the public cost, as a proxy of the value of the ecosystem services. However, we need to start speaking with them to reach that trade-off valuation, incorporating the social costs and the externalities in addition to the market prices, and incorporating the society interiorization of the valuation of the nature. Is all of this the best valuation? Is the valuation that we are providing at this moment in the different projects, in the different, but the room is large to improve and to try to engage more and more stakeholders and views in the problem of providing a monetary valuation of the contribution of the natural capital. But at least policymakers start working with trade-off and with different approaches and meanings and stakeholders. And that is all from my side. If you have, I will stop sharing my screen and happy to answer any question.
Well, I think that's a very interesting presentation. I like the last slide showing the line of action from priceless to the trade-off and how use stakeholder to improve policy decisions.
I would
I
like to
have
share a question if possible. Arantxa, you have mentioned a little bit about the methodologies that are mostly used to involve the society. But from your experience when reaching policymakers and other stakeholders groups, which type of methodologies or ways of approaching them would you consider more effective?
When working with cultural ecosystem services, the best one is the contingency evaluation. This means developing, for instance, for the cultural ecosystem services in that coastal area, in the Atlantic area, we did 3,000 surveys, but those surveys are not surveys that you can send to the people to give answer. It's a survey that is a process. You start introducing, probably you spend 20 minutes with each of the persons give an answer to the surveys. It's a complex process. You have to introduce the cultural element to assess. You have to offer an initial price, and we need to offer an uniform distribution of the prices, not to balance the price to a very low or a very high price. Then they say if they are able or not, then you offer a new one and they offer a new one. So what you are doing is, given that there is not a market for cultural elements, because we cannot go to any market to buy and to sell, the importance of maintain the existence value of our coastal resources, we need to create the demand function for those cultural ecosystem services. And the way of doing this kind of surveys. Another possibility is to organize workshops with 20-25 people, and which is what we call deliberative methodologies. And it's a kind of, we apply also econometric modeling, but you organize workshops in situ with people, but the problem is that it's not possible to develop so many workshops and to engage so many people. If you compare, perhaps you can organize 10 workshops with 25 people in a deliberative process, and with the contingency evaluation service, we were able to develop more than 3,000 surveys, but we discarded due to the quality of the. We should discard if the quality, if you see that the quality of the survey finally is not good. So the only way of doing this is with working with the people. That is the reason why some policymakers don't want to take into account the monetary evaluation of the cultural ecosystem services, because it's something that is not coming from the market. And then they prefer taking into account only what we have seen, the quasi-market value, which is poor. It's poor to
But my
assess.
question was if you have a specific methodology to engage those policymakers. Or the
Yes,
workshops
in our particular case, what we do is to work with them in a weekly way. It's just, I think that the best is each region to have the relationship with the administration and to start introducing the topics, 1 week and another one and another one and another one. That is the work that we do with policymakers. We don't organize a policymakers related workshop or something similar. What we do is to speak with them in a weekly or every once in a month, depending on a set about a set of topics. And this about ecosystem services is one of them. In any case, all member states all member states in the European Union should report to the marine strategy in the context of the cycles. And the marine strategy, as I have commented in the first slide, don't want to continue using the maritime economic activities as a proxy of the cause of degradation. So member states should all start reporting to the marine strategy about the monetary evaluation of the ecosystem services. So the policymakers in charge of the application of the marine strategy know about this and should speak with the research bodies in the different countries to work. And many research bodies are working due to this, at least due to the marine strategy, because if not, for a policymakers, it's very difficult to understand that the general society can have evaluation that is not coming from the same for the regulating. I must recognize that the carbon sequestration is well accepted by everybody, but other regulating ecosystem services, no. The transference of nutrients. For example, for diadromous fisheries, we should estimate the ecosystem services associated as a regulating ecosystem service, but the monetary evaluation of the transference of nutrients is the concept is more difficult for a policymaker to understand. And it's something that we should speak with them periodically about the concepts.
Arantxa, you mentioned the tuna example. I think that you do this exercise for many other species and even ecosystems. So I like to ask you, what's the role of the marine protected areas play in the ecosystem evaluation?
Yes, it's very important because one of the reasons why member states are developing the ecosystem services evaluation is because it's one ingredient more to add to the marine spatial planning design or so we need to map. It's not only the evaluation but also the mapping of the evaluation of the ecosystem services, mapping together with the habitats, for example. What we usually do is to provide the assessment, but also to map in a particular area where you want to consider the establishment of a marine protected area or a special protection area. You can map the habitat in that area and you can put for the different habitat in that area, which is the provision of ecosystem services and evaluation. And it's something to take into account later for the management of that area. For example, in some countries, they identify the green infrastructures depending on the amount of ecosystem services. And then they are providing the amount in physical terms, but also in monetary terms.
Mm-hmm. We have a question on the questions and answers. Can you read, Sarah?
Yes, of course. So this question is from Gillian, and she asks, what willingness do you see among policymakers to learn about and accept valuations that go beyond only market-based valuations? And she says, for example, including social valuations.
Yes, of course. We should. What the most important is to consider a multi-perspective of the evaluation and multiple stakeholder engagement and valuation, and to consider all of them. It's not necessary to choose. In fact, because depending on the data you have, you should consider a social valuation or not, but at least you should take into account how far are you from the ideal valuation of the contribution of the nature. But what we usually see when speaking with policymakers is that they really think that the market price is the nature value. and price and value is not the same because the social valuation should be considered among others. But it's not a problem if you don't have the social valuation. You start working, countries start working, but the most important is to know the meaning of what you are producing. At least the meaning, because €1 of price is not €1 of value. It's not. Everything is in euros, but it's completely different. The meaning, as you have seen, very fast. Sorry, but with the figures you can see very well that the meaning and the valuation is completely different. But and we put together. The economists usually put everything together to provide a bigger figure of the contribution of the natural capital. I know I put everything together, but it's not really the same. We put together, but it's not the same.
Perfect, thank you. There aren't any other questions in the Q&A at the moment. I don't know if anyone has. We have a couple of minutes left if anyone wants to add in a very quick question there. I'm not sure if you want to wrap up. Maybe just before we do, Rance, I just have one quick question myself. And I'd say, given that maybe policymakers don't have a scientific or technical background, what do you think is the best way to present this information to them, or what format?
What format do you think when communicating with them, or?
Yeah.
I think that, for example, the sample of the Mesopelagic,
Yeah.
as you can see, is very illustrative because this is a real example. There is a Mesopelagic community of species that we know that they are, but there is not commercial exploitation. And policymakers, they want to decide if it's necessary to exploit or not. If you put a real valuation, okay, I can exploit and I can get a market price, but be careful because I lost this and this and this and this. What happens with the regulating? Because Mesopelagic play an important role in carbon sequestration across the vertical in the water. So for me, the most important is to speak with them with the samples, real samples that we have already developed, and we can see if you take this decision, you are missing this and this and this valuation, and if you take this other decision, you are considering this and this. And it's the best because obviously if you start speaking with them in terms of the figure, they will lose 5 minutes later. But here I wanted to go from the theory to the practice, but with them you can forget about the theory. It's better if you go to the practice, to go to the one slide and one example.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It seems just that practical examples and making it very tangible to them is so clear.
Yes.
And thank you very much. I think now we are coming to the end of our session. Rance and Susanna, thank you so much. I don't know, Susanna, would you like to say any closing words?
Well, just thank you to the audience and apologize for the problems with the Mentimeter. Thank you for answering. And it was a very interesting session. Hope you enjoy and hope you register for the last one on the 31st of July. And then you can enjoy the summer in August if weather allows. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us today.